because I live in Detroit, I was able to get tuition-free college through the Detroit Promise. I feel very fortunate working with the Detroit Promise. They were able to afford me so many opportunities. I'm currently studying media production and journalism at University of Michigan Dearborn. I'm looking to take my talents further into the production industry, short films. I love working with people here, and this is where I want to be. And that's why I'm Detroit for life.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabria, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and yes, another very exciting week. We have a little bit of a truncated panel, but the quality, of course, that means it'll be concentrated. So, going around the horn, we have two of our three attorneys. We have Steve Fishman, we have Joel Sklar, because Bill Cycli is actually out doing lawyering stuff today. So, there we go. We also have pollster Ed Sarpolus. Missing today is labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, who is on vacation. She's apparently in the north of the state, in a place where Steve himself introduced the denizens there of people of the Old Testament years ago when he was an athlete in the expanded version of the pamphlet Famous Jewish Sports Legends from Airplane. We have
Sandy Koufax might be listening to this, but you just go right ahead.
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but he probably made page one. But no offense.
Well, while we're talking about that, are we celebrating the Jewish now head of Mexico?
Oh, yeah, we have Miss shout out to Miss Claire Scheinbaum, first woman, first person of Jewish heritage in Mexico. We have veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and we have co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel.
Wow, before we get started, can I tell a very short anecdote about the new president of Mexico? Apparently, there's a fairly widely followed Twitter account out there. It's a guy I've never heard of, but he's a big booster of Israel and the Jewish people. I don't think he's Jewish himself. He could be. But he made a point of saying that, claiming that she was not really Jewish because she gave thanks to Jesus in her acceptance speech. It turns out she was talking about her husband, Jesus. I saw the screen capture of the tweet. I tried to look it up, but I think it was deleted out of embarrassment. There you go.
I think the demographic that was probably most disconsolate with that name was Jews for Jesus, who thought they'd finally had their shining moment. Well, it seems that even though we have a power play of 2 out of our 3 lawyers, it has not caused the news cycle to be any less fertile with information and stories about court cases. And so a couple of big court cases. First of all, Georgia. The appeals court in Georgia has issued an indefinite stay on the Trump election fraud case, claiming they still have to figure out if Special Prosecutor Fani Willis is in fact to be disqualified. This looks like then we're not going to hear about Georgia until after the election. What to make of this, Steve, Joel, or anyone?
I don't think that's an unusual thing. The problem when you have something like what occurred down there in Georgia with her and her boyfriend is that it gives the courts an excuse to set everything into slow motion. And we've talked about this before. The fact that she and Wade did this is so beyond my comprehension that they kind of deserve it. It's too bad because, as you guys know, I've always said that was the strongest case because you got him talking and he's basically confessing when he's talking to Raffensperger. But I wasn't surprised at all, Saeed. Honest to God. I mean, You're seeing it in Florida with Bannon, and you just can't give the opportunity to judges, to panels of judges or individual judges to do something to you like that when you did it to yourself. That's what's so sad about this whole situation.
Yep.
How did you get so cynical about, how did you get so cynical, Steve, about love? And maybe even more importantly, how did you get so cynical about lust? I mean, these are human impulses.
I'm in the Tina Turner camp. What's love got to do with it? That's what I say.
Wait a minute. That's an 80s song. That's an 80s song. Oh my God.
No,
we've had a breakthrough.
Ike and Tina started back in the 60s when he was still singing with her. So that's why I know them well.
I bought their album Funkier Than a Skeeter's Tweeter in the 70s. So
Fanny's only help is the fact that she did get reelected. Okay, that's the only thing going strong for her.
Yeah.
Because otherwise she'd be gone. The only question, gentlemen, is the fact, I guess in Georgia, if they remove her, they get to remove her whole team. So you have to rebuild a whole new team.
Right.
So there'll be no
and Ed,
more
doesn't that mean that it would be kicked to another county, and then that DA has a discretion about whether or not to bring the case forward?
I've not heard that. I think it could still be held there, but I haven't heard that has to be moved.
Okay, Nancy.
I wasn't. I was waving at Michael Lucido, our old control director, I guess you'd call him.
Hey, Michael.
Run this show back when we were doing it live from the Ford building before the world changed.
I was thinking you say you're now dead.
Yeah. From the Ford building.
A long time ago when we was fab. Joel.
Joel.
Oh, Mike, I just don't think you'll see any more trials until after the election. I mean, this is the one we got. We got a guilty verdict. What it's going to do, who knows? But, Garrick Marlin waited a little bit too long. Didn't pull the trigger quick enough. And, his patience has not paid off.
But speaking of Merrick Garland.
I mean, it looks like this. I mean, it's so bothersome. I think the Supreme Court is still not ruled on the Trump case, waiting till the very end. I mean, why? And maybe the lawyers can explain it. It seemed to be like one of the highest priorities. We have an election on the line. I mean, if I was voting for a candidate, I mean, it's not going to be a choice here, really. But for people who want to know, should I vote for this guy? Not that you have, I mean, he's a criminal regardless of what the case is, the outcome is. But nonetheless, voters should have the opportunity to know if somebody's guilty or innocent before they elect somebody.
Steve.
I agree with that. There's no doubt that that's accurate. But the thing you have to keep in mind is we have people in the judiciary, and particularly sitting on the Supreme Court, that's not what they're interested in. They're interested in doing exactly what they're doing, which is delaying it so it doesn't hurt this guy. And that's the sickest thing of all of it. The Supreme Court, my entire life, going back to the Earl Warren days, they did whatever they thought was right. And if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. And the reason you're saying that, Alan, is because you're my age and you can't believe that we've come to this, but we have. And that's what we all have to recognize. Garland, he was my schmuck of the week not that long ago. And this was part of the reason, because this case should have been brought way back when. And then all this crap could have happened. And then if whatever they wanted to donkey do around with it, we've had a trial. And that's unfortunately not going to happen.
There was some conversation by one of the Democratic Supreme Court justices hinting the fact that this might be the compromise of them saying he is entitled, and basically we'll give you that he doesn't. It won't happen this year. There's this conversation what the rule might have been that the panel 6 would have given the expungement of the he can be above the law. There was a talk of a compromise. Either they say that, or we'll give you what you want, Dem. So we have to. It's nothing till after November.
That'd be terrible.
In all honesty, I wouldn't give any credence to anything anybody says about what's supposedly going on in the back room of the Supreme Court. Opinions are just like assholes. Everybody has one, right? So
other than the fact we'll have to have our flags upside down.
Well, Ed, on that point, Ed, what about the unsubstantiated rumor that a leaked copy of the decision is hanging upside down from Alito's flagpole?
His wife put it there, though. Don't worry.
When you say the bottom flap, that reminds me going to Cedar Springs when you wear those red flannel pajamas. Like everything flips down.
Like you mean like the Dr. Dentons, the ones with like the hatch in the back?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I just add one thing? And I mean, we've had one. So there's 4 Trump trials that were on deck a few months ago. We've had one. There are 3 more, and just the reaction to this one, which is supposedly the runt of the litter among Republicans, has been. I mean, I didn't think anything could make me feel more contempt for these people than what they've already done. But, the reaction from, the adults in the room has been, we're going to throw a monkey wrench into Washington and nothing's going to get done because we don't like this. Mike Johnson says he's going to ask the Supreme Court to somehow throw out this conviction. They're, among the bottom feeders, the people that the guy in the pickup truck with the, listens to with the InfoWars sticker on his bumper, those people have been essentially threatening violence. They have been calling for violence. Sooner or later, something is going to happen behind this, and it's going to be on them. I don't care what anybody says. This, they walk around saying, well, these were trumped up charges, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, they weren't. There was a little creative legal stuff going on here, but if Hunter Biden has to sit in a courtroom for a gun charge, which, probably wouldn't even be brought to 99% of the population. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with this. But
Saeed, we have video.
We do have video.
We have video on.
I present to you is why we need courts. Whatever flaws the American justice system has, and they are legion, especially for non-billionaire former presidents, it does appear to be the last place in America where you can't just say whatever the you want, regardless of reality. Trump knows this better than anyone.
Now, I would have testified. I wanted to testify. The theory is you never testify, because as soon as you testify, anybody, if it were George Washington, don't testify, because they'll get you on something that you said slightly wrong, and then they sue you for perjury. You would have said something out of whack, like it was a beautiful sunny day and it was actually raining out.
Yes, our jails in America are filled with incompetent weathermen.
Yeah.
I saw the longer video from that, and it's really good, and it's essentially saying what Steve's been saying here for months, which is get these people in court, and they can't just talk about whatever they want. They have to actually have to follow the law. And they had video where they compared Rudy Giuliani, at a microphone in near the Capitol on January 6th, saying this was fraud, and then in court he's like, well, no, this is not a fraud case. So I mean, he's absolutely right there. It's it was a longer piece. We couldn't probably run the whole thing, but there you go.
Well, one of our viewers said that Trump should be made to bend over, but I do believe that those bone spurs might preclude that from happening. But what really scares me is the fact that if Mike Johnson is saying that he's going to ask the Supreme Court to overturn the conviction, the current Supreme Court might actually grant him standing to do so. I mean, things have just sort of gone off the rails.
I mean, doesn't this have to go?
Steve?
Go ahead, Steve.
They're just, overstate revenues. I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go.
As is often the case, when Mike Johnson opens his mouth, he's completely full of shit. Okay, this is a state court case. A state court case gets appealed to the state court of appeals. If they lose in the state court of appeals, they can appeal it to whatever they call it in New York, but it'd be the state Supreme Court. Then, if you have a federal issue, you may be able to try to take it to the federal district court. And whatever happens there has to go to the Sixth Circuit. And after that, or not the Sixth Circuit, whatever circuit it is in New York. And then maybe the Supreme Court somehow, if there were really a federal issue, is involved in there. But the thing that maybe you guys missed, but I didn't. When Mike Johnson said that, the way he said it, he didn't say, we're going to take the case to the Supreme Court in the normal fashion. What he said was, I'm going to talk to my friends on the Supreme Court. I mean, what he basically confessed to was attempted obstruction of justice, because none of us, I've got plenty of friends on the bench in federal court and state court. And the last thing I could ever do, I have people I grew up with, they're now retired, that sat on the bench. The last thing I could ever do is sit there and talk to them by myself on the phone or in person without the other side present, without some kind of court proceeding going on. And this guy says that. And then finally, maybe 2 days later, maybe some real lawyer tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, Mike, you just confessed to a fucking crime. Why don't you change your tune? And then he came out. Remember, he kind of said, well, I didn't really mean I was talking to them personally, and I know them. I mean, and this guy claims to be a trial lawyer.
So interestingly enough, Steve, the highest court, state court in New York, is actually known as the Court of Appeals. And it would be the second federal district or circuit for New York, which one of the most famous jurists on there was a guy by the name of Learned Hand.
That's right.
So there you go. I mean,
Wow.
a very erudite appendage. Hunter Biden does have one cheerleader, and I use that word very specifically. It's Lindsey Graham, who actually that the trial that a normal person would not be tried for something like this. But on the trial, it started this week. So far, we've heard from, as Taylor Swift would say, a box of old lovers, or whatever that line was from Blank Space. But all of these ex-lovers have come forward that the prosecutor has brought and talked about Hunter Biden, but in far kinder words than any testimony that was given about Trump or Harvey Weinstein in that capacity by somebody else. How is this trial going, and what are we to make of it?
I think first, I'll just say, first of all, it's bullshit. I mean, the tax case, that's another story, but the gun charge, I don't, and Steve can probably speak to this. He shouldn't be on trial for this. It's, normally diversion would not have been unusual. And I think it's only the politics of the special prosecutor feeling like obligated to charge him in this. And it's a bullshit case. And I look, Abby Lowell is a very competent lawyer. I used to deal with him when he represented Gary Condit in the Chandra Levy case. He's a pit bull of a lawyer, and I think he's got a good shot of winning, but who knows?
Well, Steve, first thing, as we know, we discussed this when it first happened. They had a plea deal. They went in front of the judge. Somehow, I mean, these are supposed to be great lawyers. Somehow they hadn't figured it all out and had it all ready to go as to whether or not he was going to get immunity or not be prosecuted for anything else if he took this plea to this bullshit charge that he's now standing trial on. And they had a disagreement, which how it didn't come out until they were standing in front of the judge is beyond me. But they had a disagreement which caused the plea agreement to fall apart. And that's why they're in trial to begin with. With respect to the trial itself, the witnesses are being called, although all I'm doing is reading it in the Washington Post, summaries of them. But it makes it sound like they're trying to do it's a porn movie, basically. But they're being called. The only issue, it seems to me, and Alan's absolutely right. I've been doing this 51 years. I've never had a case or heard of a case in the Eastern District of Michigan where someone was charged with this crime. But what they're trying to show is all of the drugs and all this, basically the drugs, because it's not alcohol that caused the crime. They're bringing all these women in to testify that on this date and on that date and that's the date, he was high all the time and he was smoking crack. And I guess the Bo's widow was also a crack smoker. But that's the purpose of it. I don't think we can predict what's going to happen in the case unless they feel sorry for him. If they feel sorry for him, jurors have their ways of expressing that in the verdict. But it seemed to me, just from what I'm reading, they've established fairly clearly that the guy was on drugs when he signed the affidavit and said he wasn't. I mean, I think whether the jury's going to say it beyond a reasonable doubt, but if they don't, it's going to be because they feel sorry for him, maybe the family, maybe the women, maybe everybody, because it is a sad state of affairs. That's for sure.
I think what they say
could that be an affirmative defense or a diminished capacity or anything like that, Steve?
No, because the diminished capacity is exactly what he's being prosecuted for. What it is it's jury nullification, which you're not allowed to do. I can't stand up, neither can Abby Lowell, and say, look, he did it, but let him go because he's a good guy or because the poor son of a bitch, blah, 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 blah. But jurors themselves, when they go in the back, you got to remember, at least so far, you never know if the MAGA people get back in, the jury room is sacrosanct. There's nobody listening. There's nobody telling them they can't do this or they can't do that. They could get in the back and agree, hey, we're hung, or hey, we feel sorry for him. We find him not guilty. I've had more than one case where the defendant was found not guilty, and there was no doubt in my mind it was jury nullification, even though I couldn't make that argument. The lawyer can't say it, but the jurors have every right to do it.
But Steve, I can't find anything in reading, and you've done more reading than I have, that they have a date when he was using drugs close to the time that he bought the gun. It's not. That's what I'm reading right now. There is no close date that they can verify that he was that day.
And that's what I think. If there's a not guilty verdict or a hung jury, it'll be what Ed just said. That's exactly what'll happen. Look, they can't show us that exact day. The reason they're calling all those witnesses, in my opinion, is to say, look, he was high here. What are the odds he wasn't high then? Is that proof beyond a reasonable doubt? Who knows?
Is the affidavit that he was not using drugs or that he was addicted to drugs?
No, I don't know.
Using at that time.
Using at the time he bought it? Okay. So
yeah, because most of his ex-girlfriends either said, I stopped dating him long before that. He doesn't have any of his women actually admitting that they were close to the date when they were dating and were using drugs at that date. That's one of the difficulties.
Huh.
But I think also one of the arguments is that he just got out of rehab after he signed that, and that he felt that he was no longer an addict. But
I was just going to say, most of the people I know who abuse drugs in that way will, first of all, tell you, I'm not high. No, I'm not high. I'm not doing on anything right now. I mean, they just, I think they lie so much. Addicts tend to lie so much that they just come to believe their own lies.
According to Trump, the only person who gets away with using drugs is Biden because he's always hyper at his State of the Union speech.
Yeah, I was going to say only Trump and him and his son, who both regularly go before microphones with white flecks falling out of their nose, practically can get away with saying bullshit like that. But go ahead.
So here's the one last thing about the Hunter Biden situation, though, is that I think I said this on the show when the whole thing fell apart. That original deal that they claimed they had, that Lowell claimed they had, nobody would get a deal like that. Not with, we don't know the income tax case, but it's not over $5,000. It's supposed to be over a ton of dough. And I've represented plenty of people charged with variations of income tax evasion. And when you start getting into the millions of dollars, you're never going to get a deal like what they were claiming that they had. You're going to plead to this bullshit gun thing, and they're going to dismiss, they're going to ignore the other one. That to me never made any sense in the first place.
Huh.
The only thing he's got going on the tax thing is he paid off his taxes. That's the only thing he's got positive going, that he did pay his taxes.
But Ed, just so you know, that's a sentencing argument. That's not whether you did it or not.
Okay, all right.
And a lot of times people forget that. A lot of lawyers forget that. They make arguments that are great if you were pled guilty and now, oh, look, he's a good guy. He quit using drugs. He paid off his taxes. Those are all sentencing arguments. That has nothing to do with whether somebody can be charged.
All right.
Nancy, I don't know if you can still remember some of those parties where they used to pass the duchy to the left-hand side. They passed the affidavits to the right. So, multitasking was good. I mean, I don't even know half the things I signed in college, but I'm still. That's why I'm probably still on the hook for. I'm still on the hook for Columbia House.
Upgrade your software, and it says you agree to this, and it's just insane. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
no, I'm still on the hook with Columbia House. So there you go. But we did have a case where an appellate court actually rejected an argument. And that is dealing with Steve Bannon, who it looks like is finally heading to jail for being in contempt of court for failure to disclose documents and testimony dealing with Donald Trump. So is that a win for the justice system?
It's a win for the justice system because A, he was convicted by a jury, if I'm not mistaken, I think. And then B, everybody has the right to appeal. And what Bannon was trying to do and his lawyers are trying to do. They wanted to win the appeal. That didn't happen. So now his next step was keep me out so I can go to the Supreme Court and stall around a little more. Well, those judges said July 1st, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that what that's the paper?
Yes.
So, and once they do that, even this Supreme Court, for a case like this where it was absolutely clear, the issue he raised, he was ordered not to do it. I mean, that's been absolutely rejected by the trial judge, the trial court, and now the Court of Appeals. There's nothing to keep him from going. If they keep him out, if the Supreme somehow get in the middle of this, that'll just be further evidence of what Nancy's been talking about how far we've fallen.
I see this a little parallels to the OJ case. OJ got away with murder, but then he ended up going for something lesser to prison. Right. Bannon was charged with stealing, I think it was over $1 million of donations that people were to build, finish building the wall. Trump pardoned him. That guy should be in prison for 10 years. So any amount of time is great that he should do.
Well, what's the amazing thing is the fact that this morning they said that one of the reasons the court was so strong is it was a 1961 case. He's trying to plead. His attorney told him to do it. And then the judge says, well, if the attorney, why didn't you at least show up and say something? You just didn't even show up for the committee meeting.
Can I just say something about this? The regular readers of Deadline Detroit may remember that Violet Economova and I actually went to that We Build the Wall town hall because they held it in Detroit, and we wrote a story about it. And I distinctly remember talking to this was a absolute D-list MAGA event. Okay. I mean, I was stunned to walk in and see Bannon up on the stage. It was, the guy, Sheriff Clark, the guy with the gigantic cowboy hat, some also ran from American Idol who, wore a MAGA gown to the Grammys or something, just the real idiots. The guy who was like the triple amputee who served in Iraq. I forget, what was his name? I forget. Anyway, it was a sad event. It was a very sad event. And it was made sadder by the fact that it was in Kobo in one of these giant rooms. And, their little crowd of maybe 100 and some people, if you count the guy driving the Trump Unity Bridge truck, we're kind of like huddled all in one corner. But I remember talking to these people, and there were people there. They were not the brightest knives or sharpest knives in the drawer, shall we say. One guy said, I live on Social Security, but I'm going to send $5 a month to this guy, to this We Build the Wall effort. And this is who Steve Bannon, who I've been told is extremely wealthy just because he was a smart investor in Seinfeld or something. Yeah. What's the story about him? Extremely wealthy. This is who he was stealing $5 at a time from. And as I recall, he was arrested by the FBI on a yacht. Exactly. A yacht owned by that Chinese dude. And I'm thinking, what more do these MAGA chuds need to understand that they are victims of, of a long-running, multi-tentacled grift? And I guess, you can, all this stuff has come out. It's all been made public, and still they believe. And it's one reason that I have nothing but contempt for these people. And I have had it up to here with this bullshit about, can we all get along? Can we find our common ground? No, we cannot find our common ground. I have no common ground with these people. They're awful people.
And the other thing that he's got going is the fact that billionaires actually fund him through a salary. He doesn't need the money, but they keep funding him because they don't want to go public themselves. So they're using him. So as long as he puts up his mouth, he keeps making a paycheck every time he says something. Yeah, exactly. And he's stealing that old man from Shelby Township's $5 a month too. So there we go.
So Nancy, by chud, do you mean cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking. Because of course that was a classic movie from
Chuds,
back in the day. So
should we do a commercial?
Let's do a commercial.
All right. Okay.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
Fellas, I'm new in town, and I've been here a couple times. I absolutely love your place, man. But I've got to ask you, if you can, I've heard that you're going to be shutting this place down.
I'm not proud of it, brother, but we're behind our property taxes. The county is all over us, man. I'm even afraid to even give them a call.
Well, we can't let it go, brother. I mean, we can't give up. There's got to be a GoFundMe campaign that we can run, even past the plate. Is there a forgiveness program or something that's out there?
Well, unfortunately, that's only for the big guys. No, actually, Wayne County has payment plans for everyone.
Are you for real?
Yes, it's a well-designed program. We want to help you save your business.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. If you have delinquent taxes on your home or business, contact our office, 313-224-5990, or visit our website, treasurer.waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Got it.
Don't be surprised if you see Eric Sabri in the Academy Awards.
The other reason I liked that commercial when I first saw it, now I know why he was bald. How many takes did it take to do that?
To get him to deliver that? Yeah, exactly. I also like the first one because I love expungement fairs for nonviolent felons.
Yeah, it's great.
That's a cool program.
there may be somebody who might have to use that, Nancy, and that is speaking of Academy Awards, the other William Smith. The former CFO of the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy has been charged with bank and wire fraud with the possibility of $40 million in embezzlement. I mean, I see, Steve, you're just shaking your head because, I mean, the numbers are staggering. I think, wasn't it a total budget of $157 million?
I don't know, but $40 million is a lot of money to make off with without anybody bothering to pay attention. That's what gets me.
Well, the only thing I heard, the only thing I heard of from an FBI friend of mine, he says that what they're planning right now, most of them might have been through Bitcoin, okay, because it was moved so quietly over 8 years that it probably Bitcoin had something involved with that.
Huh?
Oh man, cryptocurrency.
It's just, but I mean, really, when you talk about, I mean, we've seen embezzlements where it's like somebody over 5 years takes out $1.2 million total, or even a couple million, but $40 million. I mean, what kind of budget do you have that you can afford to miss $40 million? I know at Deadline Detroit, if we were missing $40 million, I would have noticed.
Yeah, but they didn't have any accountants. They had no accountants.
Did you read the Robert Snell piece in the news yesterday, where he, obviously the FBI just laid all this stuff out for him. This guy was like this tycoon of the side hustle. I mean, he had like all these he had all these businesses, and he owned the cigar bar, and he owned this place, and he owned that place. And it's like nobody noticed. It's like, where's the controller today? Oh, he's buying liquor for his cigar bar in Southfield. I mean, I just can't believe people didn't ask questions about that. I mean, he made about $225,000 a year. And of course, nobody ever wants to talk about how can you afford this house on your salary? Because, you don't know. Do you have family money? Does his wife a big earner, whatever? I mean, nobody ever wants to ask that question. But at the same time, I mean, I was just flabbergasted. And then if you missed the great detail in there, that cigar lounge in Southfield sold more liquor than any other place in Michigan except for Little Caesars Arena, which is just, I mean, it sounds like it was quite the money laundry, but it's like, what? People need to take a little closer look at this stuff. And I just am echoing what every other human being has said when they hear the story, which is, how the fuck did this happen?
Yeah, why would you give money to that agency? I mean, you had Matt Cullen as the head, whatever, of the board. I mean, you had some really reputable people. You have a number of very reputable people who didn't probably pay any attention to what was going on. And inside somebody, I mean, it's hard to believe only one person is involved in something that that massive.
Well, it's exactly. And I mean, presumably they do audits, but everybody knows there are certain boards in any community that are the prestige boards, right? You can either be on the board of the, whatever organization, or you can be on the board of the DIA or the Riverfront Conservancy. It's just one of those. It's one of those entities that's about the prestige of having your name in the annual report.
Right.
And I just wonder if some people they think that getting onto the board is the greatest thing, and they just don't have to do any work after that. But
wasn't somebody from Rocket Mortgage on the board?
Yeah,
Matt
Cullen was.
Yeah, Matt Cullen's a Rocket Mortgage guy.
Yeah.
Bedrock, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the board, I mean, there's a lot of very prestigious people on there. And like Nancy says, I mean, you want to have that affiliation just to say you have that affiliation, but those people aren't following the finances.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, somebody should be.
Now,
I mean,
unrelated to all of this, but Dan Gilbert looks like he's acquired the Millender Center. And Alan, I think you had did some reporting on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you can't figure out what's going on. I mean, GM is shrinking its headquarters. People are working from home since the pandemic. A lot of people are working in the Warrant Tech Center. I don't know what, and now Dan Gilbert has been tasked with figuring out what to do with the RenCen, because they're going to be, office space is aplenty in downtown Detroit. And so Gilbert is lucky to have them. GM is the anchor tenant. And so who knows if anything's actually being sold or money's being exchanged, or it's like, here's 10 years free rent, give me the Millender Center, and I'd like to see all the finances there. But Gilbert's the guy who's always connecting the dots. So he's got a plan there. And he's taken over the Millender Center. There's parking there, and who knows what. There's,
I want him to take over the Penobscot building, because I've got a bad feeling about what the Penobscot building looks like inside. I mean, they were getting blight tickets. One of the most beautiful buildings in the city was getting blight tickets with his absentee owner in Toronto, who then died, and his estate now owns it. I can't believe they're putting any money into it. I mean, some of those offices had toilets that didn't work. I mean, that's ridiculous. But
the thing is, when Gilbert takes over a building, I mean, he does a great job.
Yeah,
I mean, he really upgrades them, and any building he's had down, the First National building, he did a great job. The Dime building or whatever, the Chrysler building, he's done a great job. So I agree with you. The Penobscot building was one of the premier buildings, and it's kind of turned into a shithole.
Yeah.
Well,
now he's got
go figure.
The Millender building at one time was part of negotiation with the Greektown Casino. Okay, there was because the casinos wanted the Millender building because it was so close, and so remember Gilbert used to own part of the Greektown Casino, so I mean he has some access to information of what was going on down there to cut a deal. So I wouldn't. Also remember you got the old county building over there too. So you got the old county building. Nobody's really being sexually used to the Millender. There could be a whole center type thing happening between the old county building and the Millender Center.
They could use the old city county building to revamp Auto World that was in Flint. But it looks like Dan Gilbert has some competition when it comes to refurbing Detroit buildings. Yesterday, we of course had the big concert outside the reopened Michigan Central Station, and Alan was there.
I was there. We've got, here we go. I was sitting next to Violet there. Here we go. Here's the inside. I took a tour on May 16th. And here's some photos from the concert.
Wow. You took those pictures?
I did not. I had a phone. It was painful. I was able to take some good close-ups, but thankfully Ford hired a bunch of great photographers, and they posted them this morning. So I was able to give them credit. And here was... we had Fantasia in the middle, Melissa Etheridge, and Jelly.
Who?
Jelly.
Jelly Roll.
Oh, okay.
Jelly Roll, who did, and they did a tribute to Bob Seger, and they all sang Bob Seger songs. And Jelly Roll did a phenomenal job singing "Turn the Page," and Eminem, it's interesting. They played so coy with Eminem. Eminem was the executive producer. They did not ever announce that he was going to be, performing. but people had told me that he was going to perform, and at the very end, it had already gone past the 10 o'clock time it was supposed to end. Bill Ford gets up there and says, "Now, with no further, an international icon, blah blah blah," and he came on, and then he did some stuff with Jelly Roll, and he did some with Trick and all those guys. It was a great concert. Diana Ross started out the concert.
Wow.
How did Miss Ross sound?
She was good. She was good. She was doing some very old school songs. And then, Jack White was great. There was some, good. It was a fun concert.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I saw Miss Ross 40 years ago, and she was phoning it in even then. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Absolutely. She was the third.
Your article was great, by the way, in the New York Times.
So thank you.
Yeah.
What was that, Steve?
What was that?
She was the third most talented singer in the Supremes. Mary Wilson and Florence Ballard. She just had the genius to hook up with Berry Gordy, and all of a sudden it became Diana Ross in the Supremes.
I posed with the picture of Mary Wilson in 2017. Cranes Detroit had their little welcome home Detroit thing, and they had it at the homecoming. They had it at the Train Center in 2017. Al Kaline was there, Mary Wilson, and Al Kaline. I interviewed the mayor for the story, and he was telling me that Al Kaline, when Crane was having their 2017 thing, he came to the mayor. He says, "Hey, you got to get me a ticket. I got to go in there." And he goes, "Why?" He goes, "When I first came to Detroit from Baltimore," he says, "I took the train. I arrived at that station. I don't know if it was like 1961 or something." And so he was so thrilled to be in that station. And Mary Wilson was too, So
1955, by the way, he hit 340 and won he's still the youngest guy ever to win the batting title.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, the one thing for the Supremes, I remember the first time they made the first big hit. It was the morning when I was watching in 1961 when they first appeared on Bill Kennedy's Showtime at 6 a.m.
Oh, Bill Kennedy.
Wow.
Oh, he was the best. About his little roles.
That was a good story, by the way, Alan.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hey, Alan, is Jelly Roll by any chance the son of Esther Roll, who played Florida on Good Times?
Actually, you should ask.
He was good. You know what? I mean, I was really impressed. I haven't followed Jelly Roll that closely, but when he did that song, I thought, wow. And Eminem did I assume, being the executive producer, you're able to call in people and bring in the talent. And so he brought in some really good talent. The only thing I would have liked to have seen is them do a tribute to Aretha Franklin as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Eminem's relationship was with Aretha. You just never know. But
I'm glad that
Thank you.
You're all going out of your way to show your age this week. Thank you. I'm glad that what's his face. Kid Rock was left out too. So
oh God, are you?
And Ted Nugent, right?
And Nugent.
Yeah.
Kid Rock needed some Bush beer, and they wouldn't serve it.
But I mean, the thing is, it would if Kid Rock had shown up, there would have been some booze, probably.
Yes,
a little bit.
Did Gretchen Whitmer get any booze?
No. I mean, it was a very a love fest. Everything was isn't this great? This is amazing. Detroit, wow. And Bill Ford was up there. Isn't this amazing? And aren't I amazing? And
how many people showed? What was the?
They say 20,000.
20,000.
It was supposed to be 15,000, but I mean, and you know what? They could have probably fit in another 10,000. I mean, there was a lot of empties. Yeah, I mean, it was in the park in front. There were a lot of parts that were, particularly further back, they're totally empty. So they could have gotten more. But
all right.
Well, speaking of Florida, it looks like yet another case. And I'll just go ahead and say this now because I know you guys are going to harp on poor Steve Shirt. But former University of Michigan Law School alumna Eileen Cannon has revamped the court schedule in the Trump documents case, which looks like that's also kicking the can further down regarding the Mar-a-Lago docs, much to the chagrin of Special Prosecutor Jack Smith. Is there any possible explanation that is there other than the fact that she looks like she's just helping out Trump?
No.
Not as far as I'm concerned. By the way, this is the letter winner shirt. She didn't play any sports at the University of Michigan, as far as I know. But in any event,
okay. But that duly noted. But I believe that the M is also there for the law school. But anyway.
So as we've said before, the Smith team made a choice when they charged down there, because there's only 3 judges and they had a 1 in 3 chance of getting stuck with her. They could have charged it up in D.C. because some of the activity took place up there. But in general, the feds are fair about it, and they charge people in a district where most of the conduct occurred. And obviously what he's accused of doing basically occurred down there. So that was a gamble to begin with. And the answer to your question, Saeed, is really there isn't anything that can be done about it. Judges make rulings. The kinds of rulings that she's making are not the kinds of things, at least in my view, that can be challenged on appeal. When a judge in our district tells us, the prosecutor and me, look, it's going to take me 2 months to decide these motions, he or she doesn't have to tell us why. He or she doesn't have to say it's because I'm lazy or it's because I've got a zillion things to do. They can just say it, and that's not really something that you can appeal anywhere. This is just one of those things. Trump, as we all know, has been a very, very lucky human his whole life, and he really got lucky down there. And
I think it's not just. I don't think it's just luck, Steve. I think Allan, his prayers might have been answered, and I think you've got video about this.
Oh, yes, I do.
Well, actually, her question is, she says, you've been faced with so much adversity and persecution for years. What's your relationship with God like, and how do you pray? That's Sharon from Alabama.
Okay, so I think it's good. I do very well with the evangelicals. I love the evangelicals. And I have more people saying they pray for me. I can't even believe it. And
I'm sorry.
What a piece of
I
shit
have a
that
question.
guy is.
I have a question for Steve. When we talk about a judge like Eileen Cannon, who, like in this district, if other judges see that a judge is really kind of fucking up and making wrong decisions and stuff like that, do they not come? Do the chief judge not maybe go to them and say, "Hey, you're embarrassing us. You're doing stuff," or do they say, "I'm not going to get involved"?
There's no provision whatsoever for the chief judge to come to any judge there and say, I don't like your rulings, your decisions. The only thing that can happen in a district is if there are judges who are not aging out well, let's say, and they don't want to retire, they don't want to leave, then conceivably there can be a little bit of pressure put on somebody. It's happened to 3 or 4 judges over the years that I've been in federal court. But with respect to rulings, there's just no way that the chief judge or anybody else, they might talk about it with a person, when you're at a judge's meeting or when you go out to lunch, but there's no provision at all. I don't want anybody to think there's something that can be done in the court itself, in the courthouse itself, or the chief judge himself in our district. There just is nothing you can do about rulings other than appeal them. And, if she makes a ruling that can be appealed, but these kinds of things, what I'm telling you guys, these scheduling types of things are very, very difficult to appeal. If a person was locked up, for instance, I had success once. Guy was locked up. He didn't have a bond, and the case kept getting adjourned. And I appealed it to the 6th Circuit. And not the fact that it could be adjourned, they ordered the judge to release the guy on bond because he'd been in too long. That isn't an issue in this case because nobody's locked up. So other than that, you're stuck with it when you have a judge that makes rulings we don't like or rulings that other people don't like. The judge is there, and unless it's something that can be appealed, which scheduling almost always cannot be appealed, we're stuck.
Plus, the standard of review in these is an abuse of discretion, is my guess.
Right.
Exceptionally difficult to meet. It's got to be out of passion. It's just, you're not going to hit that standard. She may be using her discretion unwisely, but she's not using it unlawfully.
And talk about adulation.
You think that's appropriate? Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor. You're Mr. Fauci in my view.
I want to join my colleague from Florida in apologizing to you that some of our colleagues in the United States House of Representatives seem to want to drag your name through the mud. They're treating you, Dr. Fauci, like a convicted felon. Actually, you probably wish they were treating you like a convicted felon. They treat convicted felons with love and admiration. Some of them blindly worship convicted felons.
That was such
Truer words were never
a
spoken.
clown show. Such a clown show. That whole day. The two guys that are sitting behind Fauci that you can see are both like January 6th thugs. They're just everything about Washington is so profoundly broken, and it's all been broken on the side, or at least almost all of it has been broken on the side of the Republicans.
Yeah.
So Ed, I don't know how plastic Trump's support is among evangelicals now, but it looks like there's some polling that shows that RFK Jr. might actually be helping Biden in key battleground states if it's a three-way race. Have you found that to be true?
That is true on a very small margin, okay? And where that's going from as Trump has backed away on staunch adversity to COVID vaccines. So he's going to basically everything where Trump's changing his position, RFK is filling that void. That's what he's doing. Okay, that's what's causing the jump. And when you look like the trouble is right now, RFK is raising a ton of money. Okay. Matter of fact, RFK will probably be making donations even in Michigan to some of his friends. They're raising a lot of money. So he's got the money. His problem is going to be is where he's going to send his roots because about 38 states, he may not even be on the ballot because he didn't get part of the Liberation Party. So his problem is he's got to pick and choose where he already knows he's going to lose. So he's going to pick a state maybe like Michigan where he can actually have a voice and have some impact.
Scary.
Wow, that is really scary. Well, it looks like Mr. Netanyahu might be coming to Washington. He received an invitation for speaking to a joint session of Congress by House Speaker Mike Johnson and others in actually now a bipartisan way. And at the same time, yesterday, the House voted to sanction the International Criminal Courts for issuing Netanyahu with an arrest warrant. Along with the Republicans, 42 Democrats voted in favor of this, including Congressman from Michigan 13, Shri Tanadar, but Haley Stevens, along with Rashida Tlaib, voted no. I know, Steve, that you were particularly flummoxed about the idea that Bibi is going to be getting a platform in D.C.
It is beyond my comprehension that he would be invited to address a joint session of Congress. It is literally beyond my comprehension. And if it wasn't enough, we didn't have enough before yesterday. You've seen the headlines from yesterday. They're attacking, they dropped a bomb and they claim they killed 3 Hamasniks, but they nailed a bunch of women and children yet again. And this guy is going to get an opportunity to come and speak to a joint session of Congress. I'd bet you money there's going to be a decent number of people that are going to walk out. I can't imagine, and I'm not talking about just the lefties. There's going to be a decent number of people that are going to say, I'm not participating in this. I just found it, when I read it, I honestly didn't believe it when we first started hearing about it. I thought it was just, ultra mag or just goofy people saying it. But when I read it in the Washington Post, I was dumbfounded. I just, honest to God, I can't say anything more than that.
I think it's.
Aren't you waiting till October for him to show up?
Well, it's a Republican ploy, I think, just to try to solidify it, is to get Jewish voters to defect to the Republicans, to say yes, the Republicans are pro, are pro-Israel, the Democrats are anti-Israel and stuff like that. I agree with Steve. I mean, first of all, he needs to. I mean, I always feel they need to put pressure. They need to continue to keep the foot on the throats of the Israelis, but they also have to put the same pressure on Hamas and there's not that far from getting a ceasefire, and they just need to. The problem is you have 2 extremists who still want to win it all on both sides, and the fact that they would bring him here is just Netanyahu has fought. He fucked with Obama. He's fucked with Biden, and Biden has pushed back, thankfully. But I think it's a mistake to invite him here. It's just.
I think the 42 votes from Democrats in favor of sanctioning the ICC was a little bit more of a bitter pill to swallow. I mean, here's an institution that the U.S. helped create and certainly has used regarding the international system of law and the rule of law. That seemed to be rather regrettable. Nancy.
I just wanted to bring up what I actually sent to you since we're on this topic. Alan, you read Haaretz on the daily, don't you?
Yes.
Did you see the story that said that Miriam Adelson is holding back her wallet, her purse for Donald Trump because she has a condition, and that is that Trump support the full annexation of the West Bank by Israel.
In Gaza, yes.
Yeah, and it's
insane.
I'm
it's
sure
insane.
It is insane. But if we've seen how transactional he is. He's not even trying to hide it. I mean, he told these oil executives, raise $1 billion for me, and I'll roll back every environmental climate change, constraint on you people making all the money you want. And I mean, I don't doubt for 1 minute he gave her what she wanted in 2016. I mean, it was moving the capital to Jerusalem and a couple of other things I can't recall right now. But I mean, he gave her what
ask. It's a big ask.
Do
you honestly think he would not do it? Go ahead, Joel.
For the right price, do whatever. You're right. For the right price, he's going to do whatever you tell him to do. I mean, the guy's totally transactional. There's no morality. There's nothing else other than an exchange of money. So she gets enough.
And I think the ICC, along with that, I think the ICC thing is not going to go away because George Clooney called the White House about his wife Amar, who could see herself Amal, excuse me. But the point, basically, because she was one of those people who voted on the ICC situation, so he was very concerned about what happens if his wife comes to the United States.
Right.
I remember running into George Clooney and Amal as I was walking out of the UN, and they were walking in. And I got to tell you, smells wonderful. I'm sure she does too. But man, he smelled like a Carolina pine forest. Anyway, before we go to our last segment, just to show you that we have taken over from MTV of showing music videos because they haven't in 30 years. Alan's got a video for us.
This is a friend of mine, Michael Nickley, who lives in Royal Oak, and he's in a band, and here's his song about Detroit.
Well, I come from a place called the Motor City. I demand respect. I don't want your pity. You can laugh, cry, shut up, and stand tall. I tell you, brother, I've done it all. Fuck you. I'm from Detroit. Yes, jeans and t-shirts every day. Manuel and Nudie don't match our pay. We don't wear conchos on our pants, just steel-toe boots in the assembly plants. Fuck you. I'm from Detroit. Fuck you. Fuck you. I'm from Detroit. I'm from Detroit. Got a bunch of burned out buildings and empty factories to explode.
You know, I always wondered what happened to Hank after Breaking Bad. But that's just awesome. I mean, who says that Southern garage bands are dead? Anyway, Alan, let's go to our last segment.
All right, let me. Oops.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All righty, Ed, who is your Schmuck of the Week?
Both Steve Bannon we talked about and William Smith. Those are the two that really ticked me off this week because they're hurting people in both cases.
I like that, the kind of a national and a local schmuck. So that's excellent. Steve.
Well, mine, you can already tell by what I said before. Mike Jansen wins it easy for me for both of those things, for trying to get Bibi to come here and speak, and then just the comments that he made about talking to the Supreme Court. I'll just go talk to my friends in the Supreme Court. That is just beyond my comprehension, honest to God. Did anybody be that stupid to say something like that? If you were a representative from Marquette, that'd be stupid. But you're the Speaker of the House, and you make it sound like, I just call up the Supreme Court and tell them what to do. So, Mike, great lawyer that he claims he is. You missed a little something in law school. Must have been the ethics part of it. Maybe that was it.
He's only 52 years old, and being a tool of that magnitude at 52. Right. Joel.
Okay, I got actually two. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, actually, for recreating Bad Boys. Terrible franchise when it came out. Still terrible. But my other one is Tommy Tuberville. Everyone seems to love Putin. I live in Normandy. He, wants Putin doesn't want Ukraine. He's a really nice guy. Tommy Tuberville is carrying.
He wants peace.
Yeah, that's all he wants. He doesn't want Europe. Get out of here. Yeah. So it's just, he was a really good coach. That's all I can tell you. He won games, but he's an idiot. And to hear him, he's my schmuck. I couldn't believe it. I mean, the Republicans embracing Vladimir. So he's my schmuck.
Boy. Oh boy, Nancy.
Well, the Grosse Pointe School Board made a late run and nearly made my list, but I still have to go because it's a little too hyperlocal, even for the embryonic law firm of Fishman, Sklar, and Cycli in Grosse Pointe. I'm going to go with the party or parties who vandalized Jordan Acker's law office in Southfield last week. Yeah. He's claiming it was anti-Semitism, and I think in this case he has a point because they plastered the place with spray paint and bloody handprints and all this bullshit. And he said, it's one thing to criticize me for my position on Israel, but when I am the only trustee of the University of Michigan who is singled out for this, I think it's fair to call it anti-Semitism, and I think he's absolutely right. And I'm going to award a light, schmuck light crown to be briefly worn by Steve Niebling, who wrote this story for the Metro Times, described it as they graffitied his office, and it's like it's vandalism. I mean, all graffiti at some point is kind of vandalism, or most graffiti is anyway. But this was absolutely, I mean, they wrote "Free Palestine" all over the walls. It was terrible.
It was fuck Acker.
Fuck Acker. Yeah, that's not exactly Sheepy McFly. Okay, I'm sorry. So I mean I'm giving it to whoever did that, and it hurts your cause when you do that. I don't understand why people don't understand that. Do they actually think that's effective? It's not effective. But there you
could
go.
be 2 16-year-olds. God knows who's doing this. And,
no, I think it was. I don't know. It was probably one of those. Those. And never mind. I won't speculate. But that's mine.
Allan.
Two real quick ones. The CFO of the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. I think it's just outrageous, and you're just a sociopath who could go for whatever over a 12-year period of stealing that much money, and just you watch videos of him at groundbreaking things, and he's just so gung-ho about it. I mean, boy, oh boy, what's a guy like that? And the other one is Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jim Jordan. Here's a committee. We're trying to find out what should we do better next time we have a pandemic. And instead, they just go off on this crazy Fauci stuff, all this fake shit saying you got $710 million from your patents or whatever. And he says, I got $120 last year. He says, I created something in 1995. I get $120 a year for it. I don't get any of those residuals and stuff. They just create lies instead of trying to figure out what can we do better next time. They don't give a shit. Just horrible,
really
horrible human.
Okay. Well, my schmuck of the week is the Columbia Law Review, who had published a law review article that had actually been censored and banned by the Harvard Law Review. It was done by a Palestinian American doctoral candidate at Harvard, looking at the Nakba, what Palestinians called the catastrophe of 1948. From a legal construct, which seemed, as anybody who's ever read a law review article, to be as exciting as any other law review article. But Harvard went ahead and banned it, and then Columbia Law Review was running it. They got pressure. The board of directors then actually shut down the whole website 2 days ago. Since then, however, the board has reinstated the website, and I think the article may be going back up. But the idea then that some of the most storied institutions in our country academically are playing politics with what otherwise would be, freedom of speech concepts is, as I think one justice called it, a chilling effect on then academic freedom and our notions of freedom of expression. I'll tell you something, that would never happen at the Wayne Law Review. So,
Everybody's overreacting to everything now. You know, it's just it's
like one of my favorite skiers once said, you know, maybe your bindings are set a little bit too loose to release. So, and by one of my favorite skiers, I meant my old college roommate Brian, who smoked an ounce of weed a week. So he knows these things. Anyways, thank you again for a wonderful week and a wonderful. You have Steve.
No, I was already by.
I was already. Okay. You're really ready to leave. All right. Thank you, Steve Fishman. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Ed Sarpolus. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And with the last word, as always, Allan.
Drive home safely.